Good day to you all, Asakwar is with you, and today I will briefly tell you about all the heroes in Mobile Hero Wars, and you will understand how actual or irrelevant heroes are as of September 2024, and why exactly. Just the most important things about all 68 heroes in less than 47 minutes. Here we go. For the 5th year in a row, I've been actively monitoring all the changes and the balance of heroes in general, making videos on the subject, and over the past year the balance in our game has once again changed very significantly, and it was changed because of the fact that our game introduced a number of impact characters as well as changed a few old ones, which in turn indirectly moved all the other heroes in the rating. So after a year, I think it's worth sharing again a new, most objective view of the game and its balance at the moment. It's worth noting that I used to do a review of all heroes at max level, but now with the introduction of the new level 80 glyphs, it's not possible to check everyone at max level. So we'll be talking about heroes not at quite max level. Everything that was on full in the last review, namely skins, artifacts, gift of the elements, item rank, stars evolution, as well as the level of the hero and his skills, will be taken into account as before. Exceptions here will be the so-called sets and new glyphs with classes. Sets won't be counted at all, as it's a raw mechanic and doesn't cover all characters yet. And for glyphs, we will be based on the old maximum of 40th level of each characteristic of each hero. Therefore, the pictures in the video will show the parameters of the heroes taking into account all of the above factors, and I add a talisman to each hero, but only the first talisman. I will frankly say that every year to do this rating is becoming more and more difficult because of the increasing number of heroes, so I would appreciate your support, whether it is a like or donate. All links in the description of the video. All images from this video in original quality are available in my closed Discord channel by sponsored subscription. I will be glad if you subscribe to it if it will be useful for you. All characters are conventionally divided into several categories or tiers, primarily based on the criteria of versatility and effectiveness. Tier G are completely unnecessary characters. When removed from the game, no one will notice it, and these are the characters that claim to rebalance in the first place. Like last year, opens our rating Kai, a mage, who was introduced in our game at the very beginning of it, one of the first heroes. This sorcerer's arsenal includes a whirlwind that tosses all opponents, a pillar of fire, explosive spheres, and 100% vampirism. All of his abilities do almost no damage, and that's why Kai is the worst mage in the game. His only use is possible with Car, but so what's the point? Fox is a 4th position penetrator marksman with very specific abilities. The ultimate with 150% physical damage in the formula is really good, especially with the stun from the 4th skill. However, blinding without damage and with a 15-second cooldown, and 6 shots with a 23-second cooldown from another skill with a combined damage of 77,000 is the worst skill in Physic Heroes. Fox actually only has a working ult, but in the current tempo meta she just doesn't live up to it. Elmir is another penetrator, but from the fighter class with the ability to switch to the long-range shooter form in the ult. Somehow all of his abilities are sharpened on illusions, but they do almost no damage and do not interfere with opponents in any way. The 3 heroes already discussed have the same problem, namely a catastrophic lack of damage. About the same could be said for Daredevil. The bomb only recharges the opponents, and her specificity to inflict additional attacks at the expense of the heroes behind her, coupled with the increasing physical damage, is smashed against the nearest tank. That's what Daredevil is bad at, attacking the nearest target, often a tank, is completely ineffective in the year 2024. Markus is a frontline healer with healing and an interesting ultimate. Even after death, he continues to help allies for a while due to his spirit form. However, naked healing is completely uninteresting, and the amount of regenerated health is actually extremely low, and its impact on the course of combat is almost imperceptible. Only an ult can make a difference in combat, but that's very little. Peppy is a control mage with several types of negative effects due to her ult, namely blinding, stunning, and slowing down. The rest of her abilities are focused on damage, but it's woefully lacking, especially since Peppy is dealing it to the nearest opponent, most likely a tank. Her only adequate use is in combination with Cleaver, Kayla, or Luther to make the shield do the maximum damage it can, but that alone is the reason no one will use her. Lars and Krista are a tandem of forgotten mages whose abilities are highly maladapted to current realities. Lars can hit literally all opponents with chain lightning, and with upper lightning he can stun the nearest one, while pulling everyone to the edge of the map with his ultimate. At that time, Krista spreads ice spikes that deal damage to victims as they move. Plus, her ultimate is also massive and deals damage to all opponents at once, while also reducing their defense against magic. All that would be fine, but all these skills are not viable in the current realities, and it is impossible to combine them according to ideal timings, and it is simply useless to use Lars or Krista separately. Cornelius is a mage who is essentially an anti-mage. He has ult with huge damage, negative effects on opponents in the form of reduced magic attack, and reduced level of the first ability of a random target, as well as a protective dome that temporarily increases the magic defense parameter for allies. But it's actually extremely hard to use this hero, especially since his monolith does physical damage, so it can be absorbed by armor. That's why he definitely needs a penetrator, or worse, it can go into a dodge, and against physic heroes this hero is completely useless. Ju is a marksman with a unique mechanic of using basic attacks into the furthest row of the opponent at the expense of his skill. In the current balance, this is a useless feature because most of the heroes are in the last row. The developers have made very dense, and fights where the last position is vulnerable are now almost non-existent. His only use is for Hydra attacks so that he deals a percentage of net damage to the target's current health, but leveling him out for this activity is very impractical since Hydra has long since been a non-issue. Thea is a healer from nature, able to heal everyone with her ult, and separately the ally with the lowest current health, concurrently speeding up everyone she heals. Her healing stats are rather modest, and even a 50% acceleration along with the silence effect from her third skill does not make this healer interesting. Tier D, these are two situational characters to use, and it's hard to use them. Qing Mao is a penetrator warrior with the distinction of having not only one penetration artifact, but also a fourth passive skill that reduces the target's armor with each base attack she makes. The rest of her skills are also interesting, allowing her to repel, blind, and bite off some of the current health of nearby targets. Only her actual problem is her low health and defense against magic, as well as her general vulnerability on the front lines. Meyer is a healer mage capable of dealing pure damage, healing allies, and disabling the movement of opponents. She gets close to the front rows and is therefore easy to control, but she can really help against dodgers due to net damage. Arachne is an uncommon mage honed in on abilities with control. Her ult as well as her third skill stuns nearby opponents in the front row, while teleport allows Arachne to deal magic damage to the target with the lowest current health. Damage from all of her abilities is negligible, plus there is no native magic defense penetration. And in general there are quite few situations where Arachne is needed, but sometimes she is still really needed. Jet is an unusual support hero for physic heroes with the most unusual and expensive way to get his soul stones. His main feature is the fourth skill, which allows you to give out the crit characteristic from the beginning of the battle to those heroes who do not have it, while increasing it to those who have it already. But this function is easily performed by Julius, giving out a crit chance with his first artifact, so the need for Jet disappeared after his introduction, and the rest of the Goblin's abilities are very specific and weak. Ishmael is a warrior whose abilities are sharpened to effectively deliver basic attacks. His dodges and vampirism, as well as stun with every fourth attack along with an ult that increases his crit chance and attack speed by 200% help him land as many hits as possible. However, his problem is exactly the same as Daredevil's. Ishmael attacks the closest target, which is very hard to bite, and without proper support or an extra damage dealer, he can't do much of anything. Carr is an unconventional warrior with the ability to deal damage to victims who are tossed into the air. He is also able to do this himself with his ult, and his second skill allows him to block physical attacks and gain extra energy for doing so. But Carr has serious disadvantages, namely very low health and a rather close position next to the allied tank, almost in first row, which makes him very vulnerable. On top of that, there's a hero that counters him, Anvari, which means he's useless on defense, and he's pretty unstable on offense as well. Orion is an unusual magic penetrator, charging much faster than any other mage in our game due to his skill increasing incoming energy for each base hit. That would be fine, but his ult does very little damage, only energizing the entire opponent's team, and the other two abilities don't make any impact at all. Orion can only occasionally be used in teams with mages only due to his tempo in the form of handing out a magic defense penetrating effect from his first artifact. Helios is the only support hero in his class that is explicitly geared towards fighting crit heroes. Earlier he really successfully defeated them in conjunction with the same Orion, but now physic heroes are so much more conscious and evolved that Helios is obsolete. His damage from abilities isn't enough to defeat them, and using him against mages doesn't make much sense. Rufus is one of the fattest tanks in terms of health, has weak values of armor and protection against magic. He is conditionally invulnerable to mages, which to some extent makes this hero an indispensable tank that will hold the first line as long as it takes. Ult protects the team by absorbing magic damage, but it is absolutely useless against physic heroes. Rufus is indeed a unique tank against mages, but here you have to keep in mind that there are a number of the same magical heroes that prohibit him from resurrecting from magic and pure damage, such as Morrigan, Jet, and Heidi. In the meantime, we move on and go up to Tier C category of situational characters, which are rarely used and are extremely demanding of the situation. Here we also meet Ginger, a 4th ranked marksman who is an engineer and has an ability that allows them to ramp up their physical attack. She also has a negative effect in her arsenal for opponents, significantly reducing their movement speed if they were pushed back by any abilities. The ultimate and 3rd skill also do sane damage, especially when you consider Ginger's armor penetration level, but all of that is not enough to be the best marksman in her class. Keira is another marksman with ricochet hits on all opponents at once, a 290% acceleration on herself, and the ability to deal extra damage if her attack completely penetrates the target's armor. The only hero from the physic direction point of view who starts to deal massive damage from the very beginning of the battle, and this works well against heroes with additional units, but the downside of all this is the excessive charging of all opponents at once. Galahad is a physical tank with a strong bias towards damage dealing. He plays from ultimate, which he uses to bring down swords on all opponents, dealing physical damage. Each of these swords can crit, and Galahad is very dependent on armor penetration, which he himself does not have, so this physical tank needs a physical penetrator and a number of other heroes for him to reach his full potential. Even his first artifact gives out a physical attack, which in turn suggests offensive potential rather than defense, and Galahad himself is very vulnerable to physic heroes, despite a good armor score and built-in vampirism. Luther, his name reflects his temperament and character. It is a truly fierce tank, fearlessly jumping into the depths of the enemy team and in every possible way preventing it from quietly living with stuns. He does this at the very beginning of the battle, which is especially important for combining with heroes who can also jump, push back, and move the enemy enemy team in every way possible. Too bad that's the only function he has. It's not enough to be a versatile tank. Dorian is a healer who is a vampire and specializes in vampirism. His aura works even after his death, and it's his key ability, which in some cases is extremely useful for heroes who can deal damage constantly and need constant healing from their attacks. This hero has no other options for use, and his usefulness is limited only to healing his allies at the expense of their attacks. Lilith is a mage of last position with a huge amount of health and the ability to sacrifice it in favor of increasing her magic attack. Her two abilities focus on dealing magic damage to the center of the team and reducing their defense against magic. Lilith's first artifact also aims to penetrate magic defense, making this hero useful in a team with magic damage dealers. Her specificity to attack the center of the team is rarely needed, but overall it's good to have such a hero in our game, I guess. Lian is a mage with unusual control mechanics with which she puts opponents to sleep and can deal some damage to them in their sleep without waking them up. Combines with heroes that do a lot of damage in a second of time, and with heroes that have their own control. Good at covering the back row and can also help stop a tempo team with mass damage, but in all other cases her relevance to the team is optional. Celeste is a mage supporting Way of Mystery with one single active skill, and the ability to ultimate using only 50% energy instead of 100%, while dispensing the effect early with first artifact on magic attack. Her healing begins to make an impact virtually from the start of combat, and blocking her healing allows her to fight enemy healers and those they treat. Celeste has always been an outstanding hero with such an unusual ult mechanic, but other than her this hero has virtually nothing else. Ziri is the toughest tank in the game in terms of armor rating, extremely effective at withstanding the front row thanks to his abilities. Skills are directed against physical damage dealers, as Ziri is able to increase her armor and defense against magic even more, as well as reflect physical damage back to her opponents, burying herself in the ground, restoring health, and stunning all nearby opponents afterwards. A very durable tank that can occasionally help in defense against physic heroes, however against mages she suffers. Tier B characters close to average, who find scenarios in auxiliary use, but who lack something to make players pay attention to them in the first place. And opening this category is Dark Star, a 4th ranked marksman with a ton of control and the ability to combine with heroes who have mark abilities. She also has the ability to deal extra damage to the opponent's heroes with the lowest current health percentage, which is also useful for getting to the target. She doesn't deal much damage and is not a full-fledged damage dealer, but rather a physical support hero for your main damager. Aurora is the only tank in her class whose durability is built not on armor and defense against magic, but on dodging. Excellent against mages thanks to the halo, which passively absorbs 80% of magic damage, but against physic heroes you should rely only on dodges. Her ultimate and the other 2 abilities are not interesting, aside from the fact that her first artifact is aimed at dispensing dodge. Chabba is a perpetually hungry, fat tank with a huge health score, good defense against magic, and proportionally increasing armor depending on his lack of health. But Chabba isn't just good for that, he's also good because his second skill, which periodically slows down a random target, is unpredictable, which is good for defense. And of course, removing the nearest target from the battlefield for 6 seconds is a very useful ult for both him and the team. Mushy and Shroom is an extremely specific and interesting frontline mage with the ability to clone himself to permanently impose silencing effects and deal as much magic damage as possible. A very interesting character that takes time to build up and get stronger as the battle progresses, while at the same time being very dependent on the support characters on his team, penetrating magic defense, and of course healing. Vulnerable to heroes with mass damage, but works amazingly well against point damage dealers. Alvanor is a support hero available with healing and healing enhancements, as well as damage reduction from basic attacks. On top of that, his ult and third skill are geared towards dealing a little damage. Fully works with heroes from Way of Nature, so to call this hero universal is certainly not possible. Mojo is a mage penetrator from nature who gains energy for ult faster than normal mages due to his quirky abilities. So, for example, healing himself and his team, Shaman immediately gets 30% of energy and passive skill hacks, which increases incoming damage to victims from all sources, is not passive at all, because for each 2-second triggering Mojo gets 10% of energy. His ult allows him to fire charges that hit nearby opponents with magic damage. This is all under his effect from the first artifact to penetrate magic defense, but Mojo himself is rather fragile and can be easily killed by massed or pinpointed quick damage. Soleil is a support hero with lots of buffs, debuffs, and even a mark. But his most useful function is to cast a halo effect on the frontmost ally, reducing the damage he takes and preventing opponents from casting negative effects on him. This ability allows you to put not a tank in the first position, but a warrior or a mage in both attack and defense, which can be useful in some cases. The rest of his abilities and even his tagged ult go against the synergy with such an awesome halo. Tier A, the middle tier or balance benchmark. Here we are met with Artemis, a 4th-ranked marksman with an ever-increasing number of arrows from her ultimate, increased base physical damage from her hand due to the combined health of her allies, and an unpredictable smart arrow that can catch up to any hero at any moment. Artemis was the best damage dealer in our game a while back, but her fragility in health has taken a toll on her over time. Judge, mage with the ability to put shields on the far left and far right allies, has a nasty control in the form of a slowdown and stun, as well as an ultimate with the same stun. Very useful in terms of strengthening the first line tank and covering a weak hero on the last position who does not want to lose his health. Gained his main importance after the introduction of Julius. Isaac is a marksman but is actually a support hero for physical damage dealers. He is able to increase the physical attack of himself and allies behind him, and for engineers he can increase armor penetration as well. Allies in the front and himself are shielded by Isaac, and the engineers under him are healed as well. With his ultimate, he strongly repels all opponents, dealing damage and lowering their armor, which is also useful for physical allies. Overall, Isaac is a support hero primarily for physic engineers, but he can also do some damage on his own if needed. Satori is a mage who aims to fight all energy manipulators, casts additional tags on opponents when they receive bonus energy, from which applying the ultimate, the fox releases a huge amount of damage. Always plays from an ultimate, so is crucial for Satori to be in complete safety so he has time to charge up. The rest of the fox's abilities are merely aids to the use of Ravenous Pack. Amira is a mystic sorceress with truly versatile abilities that affect all 3 main characteristics of all heroes. Against intellectuals, she temporarily activates aura, protecting allies from magic damage. Against agility heroes, she saves herself by increasing opponents' crit chance, but reducing the damage dealt from crits by 2 times the normal attack instead of the other way around. And to strength heroes, she burns 50% of their energy if their health is below a certain threshold, and her ult, in the form of an individual pile of gold for each opponent on the team, catches those heroes off guard who don't have time to deal damage. Such versatile abilities of Amira make her a popular character among many players. Phobos is without a fraction of a doubt the best anti-mage of the game, pumping all of his opponent's energy to himself, a negative effect on lowering his defense against magic, and a powerful ult that deals a lot of damage and burns up the victim's energy is what makes Phobos a real nightmare for many mages. He breaks a lot of magic bundles, causing them to ult not in the right time window, and also Phobos is sometimes good against physic heroes as well if he's thoroughly protected. Cleaver is one of the toughest tanks in the game. His hook breaks the enemy team's formation, pulling the often weakest hero from the end of the team, while the increased strength and health due to the passive skill allows the Butcher to take fewer crits and stay longer. A nice addition to his arsenal is a mass stun on the immediate area, as well as pure damage to nearby with the help of Poison Cloud. Cleaver has always been and is an entertaining tank, but is used by everyone quite rarely because there are more interesting options. Folio is a mage from Way of Mystery with simply stunning abilities in the truest sense of the word. His pulling the whole team together in one pile deserves an Oscar, and the ink copy gives the pace a boost thanks to the bonus energy distribution. All of his abilities fit together perfectly, and especially his ultimate, which deals massive damage if Folio is not interrupted the use of this skill. The hero is quite fresh and has no skins, so his vulnerabilities are health and armor. The stats are extremely low, but Folio still has a lot of potential. Tier S, tier of strong meta characters with great potential and a vast field of application. Starting from this tier, all the characters in it are worthy of leveling, but it is important to note that you need to focus on certain teams because it is very expensive to level all of them. This category is proudly opened by Astrid and Lucas, a great marksman who doesn't just deal damage on her own, but also tanks thanks to a separate creature created with her ultimate. Astrid is the only hero in the game who doesn't have energy, but instead has rage instead. Astrid already has 25% of this rage from the start of combat, and the attack and skill boost from her second skill is triggered at once. Each attack of Astrid additionally accumulates 25% more rage, so at the start of the battle after 3 strikes of Astrid, Lucas jumps out, and the whole team gets armor from her first artifact. It's a very fast and pacey hero that will be useful against many physic heroes, but Astrid herself can also do quite a bit of damage with her basic attacks. Heidi is a unique mage whose abilities are sharpened solely on pure damage, which of course helps against dodgers, and at the same time, he is dodger himself thanks to his artifacts and equipment items. Monkey has the ultimate with massive damage and complex toxin overlay mechanics. The only important thing to know right now is that Heidi has a lot of damage even from the third Snake Charmer ability. He is especially good against heroes with shields or health boosting abilities, and as mentioned earlier, against dodgers as well. Considered one of the best mages in the game, Martha is one of the best healers in our game. Mass healing from Tea Party, speeding up the entire team by 240%, and healing from your own base attacks is the set of the perfect healer to fit on any team. Martha has a huge amount of health as a mage and thus successfully holds off the last row. She is very effective in situations where damage enters her, and from that she only recharges and gets to ult faster. This hero is highly recommended. Anvari is the most multifaceted tank of our game. Decent health and armor protection stats for a tank, having your own armor penetration, basic small area attacks like control from ultimate and third skill, as well as protection for all allies from tossing and moving. And plus, Anvari is still able to put a shield on the ally with the lowest armor, granting him extra energy for piercing it. Every ability of this Flint is really simple and effective. He is especially useful in teams with control. It's a shame that Anvari is not immediately behind or in between all tanks, but that doesn't negate his versatile power. Cascade is an incredible 4th ranked marksman with the most powerful basic attack in our game if it completely penetrates armor. The damage from his attacks is very high and can kill a weakly defended hero on the front line in just a couple of hits. By the way, his base attack speed is very fast, and the wave and various negative effects from the ultimate transform this hero from a damage dealer to a hero with control control, which objectively prevents the enemy team in time and effectively attack or use their skills. And his first artifact is unique and gives out 2 types of penetration to the team at once, albeit in a slightly reduced numerical value, so Cascade is useful not only for physic heroes, but for mages too. Iris is a ruthless mage, with a vivid focus against any heroes with marks and debuffs, and possessing permanent invulnerability to those very debuff effects. She can lower defense against opponents' magic and deal noticeable periodic damage to those characters who use marks and debuffs. They include Yasmine, Soleil, Phobos, Satori, Astrid and Lucas, Darkstar, Lars and Krista, Mojo and many more. They suffer greatly against her, especially when they encounter her ultimate, which deals damage to all opponents upon clapping her hands, and then kills anyone with low health remaining. Iris is the kind of mage who, when attacked, can definitely be said to be impossible to ignore. Xe'Sha is one of the most powerful magical heroes of support, possesses a huge damage boost from her ultimate, a powerful, ever-increasing boost of magic attack for allies as well as for herself. Also has a very strong basic magic attack, so even the most dense hero on the first line will have a hard time with her. Xe'Sha is ideal for magic damage dealers, but she is also capable of inflicting irreversible damage on the opposing team, attacking weak heroes with magic armor first with her ultimate. Georgian is a master of control, a self-sufficient support hero for many teams, the main manipulator of energy, forbidding his opponents from gaining it with his ultimate, speeding up its acquisition with his shield to his allies, and stealing it himself with every basic attack, a set for all ages of the most odious hero against many teams. Also known for his damage transfer, Leper, which greatly hinders the opponent's hero on the last line. Though his abilities are tied to magic damage, he himself is a strength hero with a large health pool, eliminating the chance for opponents to quickly kill him as an average, thin mage. Faceless, the mage's name speaks for himself. He is flawless at copying other heroes' skills with his ultimate, which is the reason why there are countless bundles with him. Plus, he changes the damage, healing, and other parameters, often for the better, because the copied ability is level 240. Power Throw is the most spectacular control skill in the game, combining pushing back the nearest opponent and stunning their entire team. Faceless will become more and more relevant as the number of heroes grows, because the skill set for stealing skills will only get bigger and bigger because of it, which is what we see here. Morrigan acts in the roles of healer and support, and her abilities are very closely tied to skeletons. Skeletons themselves do almost no damage even despite the first Morrigan artifact with armor penetration effect, and have little health. But when there are many of them, they are useful for the third skill called Empathy, with which part of the damage received by allies is evenly distributed among all the skeletons. Morrigan is also able to do some healing, increase armor, and protection against magic to all allies, particularly the undead themselves with twice the power. And when an opponent's hero dies, she creates a skeleton out of him, and when attempting to resurrect him, she blocks it, and also gets one charge, with the help of which she gets the ability to resurrect her ally herself. In general, Morrigan is a very important and valuable hero not only in a team with the undead, but also as an independent support hero if the situation requires it. And so we come to the most interesting thing in this review, Tier M, the category of the most versatile and powerful characters that set the meta of our game. And this category opens, of course, with Astaroth. He acts as his personal shield for any team, doing everything he can to keep his team alive for as long as possible. Shield and physical damage transfer, as well as resurrection, are the most useful abilities contained in a single character. Astaroth's defensive characteristics allow him to live for a fair amount of time, living for his team, and for more than 6 years after the rebalance, Astaroth is still relevant, and of course he will always be useful for almost every team. Fafnir is the most ultimate support hero hero for any physic hero ever introduced, and has existed even after 2 years. His uniqueness as a support hero for physic characters lies in his basic attacks, which switch from dealing damage to forging a shield, the volume of which only increases as the fight progresses. The shield is able to leave 1 unit of health to the hero under it when the incoming damage exceeds the maximum health of the shield owner, which saves in a large number of situations and fundamentally changes the course of the combat. Fafnir still has quite a few advantages, such as a powerful physical attack buff for a damage dealer, and a passive 4th skill that allows you to stun opponents whose armor has been fully penetrated. So also Alt, which stuns all opponents and gives all allies a shield in the amount that was accumulated for the damage dealer, plus on top of the positive effect on the physical attack, and his first artifact has the same effect. Fafnir is an indispensable hero for physic heroes in a large number of scenarios, for whom there is simply no similar replacement. Another honor hero that makes a full-blown team with Fafnir and is a useful penetrator in his own right is Tristan. His exclusive advantage over all other physical armor penetrators is that he can quickly reach his ult and therefore distribute the armor penetration effect to all allies. After all, every time an ally in front of Tristan gets energy, Tristan gets the same amount of energy. Also, a very useful addition thanks to the 3rd skill is burning energy to the hero with the highest magic defense penetration rate. In another addition, he can deal significant damage himself if the situation calls for it, including by boosting his physical attack with his 2nd skill. All in all, Tristan is good across the board, including health, and that's really important to warrior on the close ranks. Octavia is a revolutionary support hero that allowed all players to revisit the concept of dodges from a whole new angle. Now, thanks to it, you can dodge not only physical damage, but also magic damage. Along with the introduction of Octavia, there are a lot of variations of dodge-based commands, so every time you attack a team with her, you need to select variations individually to be sure not to miss. Her huge advantage is that Octavia and her allies get an extra 5% energy for dodging each of them. Plus, Octavia herself is invulnerable to attacks and skills as long as her allies are alive. All of this makes her one of the fastest heroes in the game, and her damage deflecting ultimate pisses off even the most powerful damage dealers. When it comes to Octavia, you can't fail to mention Dante, a special forward position marksman whose main trick is playing on the basis of dodges. He can deal dodge effects to all allies as well as deal physical damage, and pushing opponents back with his spears that don't hit Dante's dodging allies or Dante himself. These spears also greatly reduce the victim's main characteristic, depriving, for example, tanks of a large part of their health, and physic heroes and mages of their attack stats. And with his ultimate, he unleashes the same 4 spears that hit different targets, deal physical damage to them, and also pushing them back. He is the most unpleasant hero on defense, who in conjunction with Octavia impose their own game and are very difficult to fight against, but on offense their offensive potential is very great if you know how to use them. Nebula is a unique support hero with no base attacks. They are converted into positive effects for neighboring allies that greatly increase physical and magical attacks. This ability literally transforms the heroes standing next to her, giving them the ability to deal an incredible amount of damage from both basic attacks, abilities, and ultimate in particular. By improving physical and magical attack in this way, she indirectly improves many abilities of neighboring allies where these parameters are involved, so even an unremarkable ult can do a lot of damage. The occasional mini healing, removal of negative effects, and an ultimate that burns energy from opponents makes Nebula useful not only in engineers, but with many other mages and physic heroes as well. The number of bundles with her grows exponentially when another damage dealer is introduced into our game time after time. Julius is literally and figuratively the most advanced modern tank with a lot of useful features. I will list a few of them. Barrier for the whole team, healing, periodic increase in their physical attack, which means indirectly increasing the strength of shields for themselves and their allies, bonus to armor and protection against magic after shield removal, speeding up heroes, as well as dispelling negative effects. The number of things Julius can dispel is staggering, and many heroes with debuffs and various controls become powerless against teams with this cat. Also, the more heroes on the team with him possess their own shields, the stronger Julius himself and his entire team are. His shields can harden indefinitely, and it often happens that the attacking team loses in time. Julius is very good not only on defense, but also offensively, as his first artifact with crit effect only enhances the offensive potential of physic heroes, and especially engineers. Snake Yasmine is one of the most dangerous and nasty damage dealers. Possesses the fastest base attack speed because she has no active ability other than her ultimate, so in almost every battle she is guaranteed to use it and attack the weakest opponent in terms of armor, and quickly cut him down in 7 hits with a lot of total damage. Immediately after she uses her ultimate, an additional effect is activated to increase her second skill's crit and dodge chance, while her third and fourth skills give Yasmine's critical hits an overlapping poison that deals more and more net damage to the victim and partially blocks healing. Very strong against weakly defended teams in general, and can fight effectively against mages as well as many physic heroes, especially in conjunction with Oya. Speaking of which, she is a frontline warrior with some limitless advantages. These include an increase in the crit chance of allies, the ability to heal with crit infliction or break shields, and an ultimate that deals as much as 500% of Oya's physical attack, and if she kills someone with it, is immediately charged at 100%. All of this combined with her first crit artifact already makes Oya extremely useful for all physical damage dealers, but the real trump card among her abilities is hunting. She uses it to lure the opponent with the lowest health to her front row. Any attacks on a marked target burn 4% of his energy. This ability breaks any team's defense without pushback and forces the weakest hero to die without doing anything, not even ulting. This is the most useful skill in our game among all the heroes, and even thanks to it alone Oya deserves to be in the highest tier. Sebastian is a key hero for physic characters who have the crit parameter inherently built into the hero. With the bard you don't need a penetrator. His pure damage added to each crit will be to the liking of any physic hero, and reducing the armor of the nearest target often makes any tank a vulnerable target. Very underrated and powerful is his ultimate, which allows you to defend against stuns and curses, and for the same crit heroes there is also the Hunter's Tune, which increases the chance of a crit for all allies at once. Sebastian is a hero with no downside. He will always be welcomed by any physic heroes, including engineers. He sets them a powerful pace. Corvus is a powerful tank. His strength is not in his defensive characteristics, but in his altar, which attacks opponents every time they damage allied heroes. The characters that suffer the most are those that do a lot of damage in a second of time, or those characters that do intermittent damage for a few seconds. Corvus is primarily an attacking tank. His second skill that temporarily increases the physical and magical attack of allied Eternity heroes makes him even more tempo, but he also has one defensive ability in the form of a fourth skill, moving an ally with health below 20% to the center of his team. Overall, he is a very unconventional tank that is a force to be reckoned with in defense every time you encounter him, and he is very handy on offense. Kayla is a top warrior from the Chaos faction with highly unusual abilities for a agility hero. Her concept is built around partially tanking to the point of losing health. Acrobatics allows her to jump into the middle of the opposing team and stay there exactly until she loses health. If such a moment happens, she instantly jumps back and starts healing herself, and once healed, Kayla is ready to jump forward again. Her combustion is activated the moment she jumps, dealing nasty net damage to surrounding opponents. But what's really interesting is her third skill, which does quite a bit of damage and imposes a blinding effect for a few seconds. Also just as interesting is her ultimate. With it, Kayla swings her weapon around, dealing damage to the opponents around her. Affected targets lose health based on the damage dealt, and Kayla herself increases her maximum and current health by that value. And if Aiden is dead on an allied team, she resurrects him. The number of useful options for this warrior is off the charts. Speaking of Aiden, he is a healer from the path of chaos, and all of his abilities relate to health in one way or another. With his ultimate, he increases the current and maximum health of his allies, causing them to burn for the same damage value equal to the raise, speeding up the energy gain process. Aiden's ultimate also resurrects Kayla if she was dead at the time. It turns out that they can take turns resurrecting themselves indefinitely with their ults during the fight. Aiden's second skill heals all allies, and Chaotic Hero's healing is 2 times more powerful. Aiden's third skill deals damage to allies with a current health greater than 80% and increases his own health by the value sacrificed by his allies. Accordingly, Aiden himself goes from a mage with average health to a pretty fleshed out hero along with his entire team. Aiden also has a 15-second cooldown shield and can create a shield around himself or every ally with less than 30% current health that lasts for 4 seconds and absorbs physical and magical damage. The beauty of this ability is that it is passive and triggers instantly, which saves in a number of situations, such as when an ally takes a lot of damage in a very short period of time. So this healer person is extremely useful not only in Chaotic Faction, and with Kayla in particular, but also in many other magical teams. And the twins Kayla and Aiden together are really an all-powerful bundle. And the last hero in this review is Lara Croft. Without a shadow of a doubt, is the best marksman of our game. Her abilities are limitless already due to passively working double shot with every attack. Thus, she charges 2 times faster than normal heroes. Lara is also able to temporarily increase her crit damage from 200% to 300% and stun opponents in the middle of the team with an arrow. The cherry on the cake is her 4th skill, allowing Lara to boost her physical attack for the rest of the fight and dig up a random first artifact effect, adding it to her ultimates. These effects can be combined with each other but not duplicated, and by the end of the fight Lara will apply all the effects of the first artifact at once, namely her native physical attack effect, magic attack, armor magic protection, armor penetration, magic armor penetration, critical hit chance, and dodge. In addition, her ultimate has its own effect, namely it instantly deals damage to all opponents, which by the way can crit, and heals all allies. Name a second marksman with such an extensive number of useful skills. There's no one else like her. Yes, Lara Croft is a very expensive hero, but she is really worth it. This ranking is coming to an end. What do you think about it? Write in the comments. I realize that the balance of heroes is dynamic, and after a year this table will definitely undergo changes, but for now the balance of power is as follows. So the best thanks from you will be a common or sponsored subscription to my YouTube channel, as well as a like of this video. Any donations I will be immensely happy. It's not hard for you, but is nice for me. Once again, let me remind you that all images from this video in original quality are available in my closed Discord channel by sponsored subscription. I will be glad if you subscribe to get it. I hope you appreciated this work. Thanks for watching.